everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Eileen Drolette. I'm the Workforce Development Coordinator at the Boulder Chamber, and I'll be facilitating the panel today. The Boulder Chamber and Workforce Boulder County are collaborating to bring you the Pathways to Success webinar series, which is designed to introduce young professionals to different career pathways in Colorado's top industries. On today's panel, we'll be highlighting the natural product sector. And real quick, a quick note to our audience members joining us today. We do have a QR code for a brief pre-panel survey, and this is just to get an idea of what your current knowledge level and interest is in the natural product sector. And I'm going to leave this up on the screen for another few seconds. If you're able to take out your phones and complete the survey, that would be great. Okay, now moving on to the agenda. Today we'll have about 30 minutes of panelist discussion, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout the panel, and we'll get to them at the end. Okay, I'd love to introduce our panelists next, and then we'll jump into questions. So first up, joining us today, we have Martha Opela, who is the VP of Marketing at Laird Superfood, where she oversees brand management, R&D, and e-commerce across their growing portfolio of product lines, which include clean, functional, plant-based snacks, food, coffee, and creamers. She joined Laird Superfood in 2022, bringing with her a strong background in marketing, health, and wellness-focused consumer products. She holds her bachelor's in French and English at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and earned her MBA in Marketing and International Business from Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management. Next up, we have Lauren Start, the VP of Marketing from Rudi's Bakery. Lauren is dedicated to using business as a force for good at the intersection of food, health, and the environment. With over 2 decades of experience in food, Lauren started her career in professional services at the Nielsen Company and Boston Consulting Group. Seeking to own results, she made the transition to brand management at White Wave Foods and Danone, working across a wide range of their plant-based and organic brands. Recently, Lauren made the transition to leading marketing at smaller, high-growth companies like Lily's Sweets, Good Culture, and currently Rudi's Bakery. When she's not thinking about food, Lauren maximizes her time outside, enjoying the great Colorado outdoors. Thank you both so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into our questions. And Martha, I'll have you kick us off. Could you tell us about what your career pathway has looked like so far? What led you to where you are now working in marketing in the natural product space?
Yeah, of course. So you guys might have caught there kind of an interesting start to all of it. I started with a major in English and French, which doesn't always lead to like what's the exact career path out of that. But what kind of set me off here was that I started at Target. So I started in retail, which wasn't necessarily marketing, but that's what got me kind of into business to start with. They have this executive leadership program that's in the stores. So I was wearing red and khaki. If you called for a manager, I'm the one you got. And so what I had gotten from that role was really loving to just run a business. It felt like I was running the store. And then I wanted to switch and do a slightly different schedule. So that took me to grad school where I focused purely on marketing. I knew I wanted to do CPG because in CPG marketing, it's like your own little business. And I went straight into all health and wellness products. So after grad school, I did Colgate-Palmolive. So I was working on like toothpaste and soaps, but still in that wellness space. I did a brief stint of sports marketing to get me out here to Colorado at Dish Network. And then I went straight to the same place as where Lauren and I actually met. And I did 5 years at White Wave, which became Danone, so kind of big CPG. And then started to get into smaller companies, which is what brought me to Laird. And I've been at Laird for 3 years and counting. So kind of a meandering way, but went from English and French and worked my way into business.
Okay, awesome. And as a quick follow-up, I know you highlighted it a little bit, but was there anything in that career journey you just described that ended up being very unexpected or surprising to you?
I'm trying to think. I think the most surprising to me was how easy it was to switch into business having been English and French, and how much of my background that wasn't just business translated into success in these roles. So a lot of things in classes you wouldn't expect, whether it's sometimes just the organization of a project and being on a team and how that teaches you how to lead a team. And that translates really hugely into the roles I'm doing now. And then some of those kind of basic math things and how much I'm still using those skills that I was learning even in high school today as I plan things out. So it's just, I think you go in sometimes to college or you're going along one path And as you realize, maybe what you really like about it is the element of leading it versus what's the actual subject. That's what kind of got me on the path that I did versus saying, I'm going to do math and I'm going to go straight into science or analytics. It was a little broader than that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And Lauren, I'll hand it off to you next with the same question. Tell us about what your career pathway has looked like so far, including both educational and professional experiences.
Of course. So I was lucky enough to go to college and I studied economics because I liked the analytical side of it. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do afterwards. And I grew up in a household where no one worked in business, so I didn't have any role models for what a job in business could look like, except for my sister's now husband, who's 3 years older than me. He graduated from college and went into business, and I thought, gosh, Kyle's job sounds really interesting. He was helping companies launch new products, and specifically what we call consumer packaged goods companies, which is anything you buy in a wrapper in a grocery store. And I thought that would be so fun to help companies launch new products. And I really like the idea of working on things that you can buy at a grocery store and I could tell my mom about and she would understand what I do. So that's how I entered into the consumer packaged goods world, largely working with really, really big soda companies who most of my clients were. And I loved helping them solve problems, but I wasn't really excited or motivated to help them sell more soda every day. I thought it was a pretty unhealthy thing to do. And so that's when I really realized that I wanted to work in natural and organic foods and help people get access to and have better healthy foods. And so that's when I started to focus more in on working with organic milk companies like Horizon Organic, working on plant-based food companies like Silk Almond Milk or So Delicious Yogurt. And I met Martha working at a company called White Way Foods, which was then Danone. And I really enjoyed working in big companies because they have wonderful training, you get great expertise, you meet a lot of really smart, passionate people, but sometimes things can move a little bit slowly just because there's a lot of structure. And I wanted to move faster, so I went into smaller companies like Good Culture, Lily Sweets, and now Rudi's, which is a 50-year-old bakery in Boulder.
Okay, awesome. And same follow-up, you touched on it a little bit, but can you pick out a moment in your career pathway thus far where you landed somewhere unexpected or were surprised by where your career journey took you?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I guess I kind of accidentally ended up in consumer packaged goods. And then I accidentally ended up with my first organic consumer packaged goods job, actually because of a school project. So Martha, this is kind of similar to what you talked about and what you can gather from school. I was going to get a graduate degree. I have an MBA and a master's in environmental science. And through the environmental science program, I got to do a project with an organic dairy. And that was the biggest pivotal moment for me and what I wanted to do in my career because of how much I loved working on this organic milk project. I loved the people at the dairy. They were so incredibly passionate. I loved working on healthy food that I would eat as a consumer. And I just felt really energized. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. Martha, I'll jump back to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a day-to-day is like in your role?
Yeah. So I oversee a couple different teams. So I lead our creative team. We have people who do all of our artwork and everything that we need in-house. I also oversee our R&D team, research and development. So the woman who makes our food and develops the recipes, kind of like a chef. And then where you buy the products. So anytime you're buying online, our Laird Superfood products, my team is the one that are making those live on the website or on Amazon. So it's a pretty broad range of teams, which is why I love the job. And so like if I think about a fun standard day, I generally come in and often I get to do a tasting in the morning where we'll have been talking about, let's try out this really fun flavor of a creamer. And so it goes from something as physical as like having a cup of coffee and trying a new creamer flavor And then I might hop over. And so that's kind of like a fun, really tactical, like Lauren said, just getting to see product and taste product. And then often I'll have to jump into a meeting that's much more math heavy. We might be looking at what do we think how big do we think this product could be? How much could we sell of the product that we're doing? So we call it forecasting. And I might jump into a meeting where I'm using a lot of math and figuring out how big a business can be. And then I get to do a lot more creative work where I go in and I probably am looking at our marketing campaigns you're going to see a lot more of Laird and Boulder, for example. We're looking at doing a billboard and some bus ads and things like that. And so I'm looking at the creative for those pieces and saying, is this what we want to say on the bus? Is this the picture that we want to use? And then throughout the day, it's kind of different versions of those. So I think it's what's really fun about these roles is you get to do something physical. And actually in CPG, you're holding and touching and tasting a product and then getting to flip back and forth between kind of a math brain and an art brain over and over throughout the day.
Awesome. And Lauren, on to you next. What does a day in the life look like for you?
Very similar to what Martha said, actually. Well said, Martha. Every day is different, which is part of why I love working in marketing for food, because I tend to get bored when there's a lot of routine. So I love that every day is different. And I'll take you guys through what my tomorrow looks like, because it's a pretty standard but fun day. So for Rudi's, we actually use an outside company to do our packaging, and we're working on some new packaging. So my day will start by driving to their office tomorrow to look at the next draft and the next iteration, and I'll be there with our CEO and our Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer, and we'll all be around a table in a very collaborative, artistic meeting. And then I'll go back to our office and shift gears, and we have a project team meeting, which is really about bringing together all the different people involved in launching new products. And we'll go over where are we with the recipe? There might be samples to try. What grocery stores do we want to sell this into? What day do we need to have it available to send to the grocery store so they can put it on their shelves? So there's a lot of different steps to launch a new product. So it's really important to bring everyone around the table so we're all sharing information and we can launch it successfully. And then I'll probably spend my afternoon doing some more individual work. And I always like to think about what do consumers need? And what can I create for them that makes their lives better? So I'll be, analyzing some quantitative data, like Martha said, thinking about how big can a business be. I'll be reading industry trend reports or listening to podcasts to learn more around evolving consumer needs. And then all of that thinking will come to life in future innovation projects.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both for sharing. And I also think it's great to give our audience that key insight into what a marketing role actually encompasses, because there's so many different aspects to it. So thank you. And Lauren, since you're already on the screen, I'm going to give you the next question, which is, how are you thinking about professional success at this stage in your career, and what are the aspirations or goals that are continuing to shape your professional direction?
I think this is such a good question. There's three things that I really look for when I think about my professional success. And the first is what I'm doing aligned with my personal values. I care incredibly deeply about the environment, which is how I ended up working for an organic food company. So I'm like, I want to be energized and feel like I'm creating good for the planet and for our people and for how we make our food. So that's the first thing I look for. The second thing, you guys might have picked up on this when I said I get bored quickly. I like to make sure I'm always learning. So I'm looking, for me, professional success is having the opportunity to keep learning. I didn't expect this when I went into the professional world. I thought you learned in school and then you go to work. But it's been really fun to see how much more I've learned in a professional environment than I ever imagined. And the third thing I look for is feeling like I'm making a difference. And that can mean a lot of different things, whether I'm making a difference in a gluten-free consumer's life because I made really delicious gluten-free food for them that they couldn't have before. Or it could be making a difference in one of my teammates' life by empowering them to pursue a project that they really like. But just feeling like you have impact is really valuable to me too.
Okay, awesome. And Martha, how about you? How are you thinking about professional success at this stage in your career, and what aspirations or goals are driving you forward?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this stage versus if you maybe even asked me 2 years ago is that for a long time, like you come out of school and it's a lot of what's the next level and how do I get to that next title or that next piece, which is really important at certain stages. But I think you even heard as Lauren was saying it, now it's really nice because I've gotten to a stage where I love where I'm at. There's still just a ton to learn. Like I don't feel like I've necessarily mastered it. And so, very similar to Lauren, my rule number one is always if I'm going to work on any product or brand, is would I feed it to my family? Like, am I excited to come home on the weekend and give it to friends and family? Am I proud of that? So, that's my number one. Anytime things come up and I'm thinking about them. The other is the people at the company. That's maybe the one different one, which I know Lauren considers as well, but are these people, especially when you're with the people you work with a lot. And so are these people that I respect and that I'm going to learn from and that are going to push me to be better in some way? So that's my big number two is kind of the team that I'm working with. And then the third, there is an element I have kids. And so thinking through sometimes opportunities come up for me that are far away. And it's like, there could be the greatest opportunity ever, but if it's way over in Florida, that's not somewhere that I'm willing to move. So I want to be able to stay challenged, but stay kind of with my family and in the place in life that I want to be as well. So those are just three maybe slightly different ones because it's all the same as Lauren, but that I also consider when I'm looking at different opportunities.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both so much. For our next topic, I want to expand outwards and take a look at the industry as a whole. I know you both entered the natural products industry via working in marketing, but there are a lot of different entry points into working with natural products, and everything from marketing, sales, delivery, food science, and so on. So, and also there's lots of different levels of education required. So I'd like to hear from you both. From your experience working in this industry, can you tell us a little bit more about what some of those entry points or types of roles look like for people who want to get started working in natural products? And Lauren, I'll switch it back to you. Take it away.
This is such a good question, and I probably am not even aware of a lot of the different ways that people get in just because my personal experience is through marketing. But I would say a great way to get into natural products is through marketing or sales. There's a lot of entry-level jobs that provide you with tremendous training and education on the industry, and you don't really need to have any sort of prerequisite experience to get these roles. So, in a sales role, that might look like you're working at a distributor, going into grocery stores and checking your brands or trying to sell in brands to the store manager. In marketing, it could be as a marketing specialist, supporting someone like me and Martha by running the marketing budget and keeping track of how we spend our money and reporting on that, or managing our organic social campaigns. Also, if you're interested in marketing, I think another way to get into the natural products industry that's really powerful is by working at a professional services company that's selling services to someone like Rudi's or to someone like Laird Superfoods. And that could be like, I use a separate company to run our social campaigns. And so that's a great way for someone to get to know the industry as well, is by working in this ecosystem of companies that support the actual people making the product. Because there's a lot of roles and really fantastic training in those companies as well.
Okay, awesome. And Martha, I'll hand it off to you. What are some of the entry points you've seen working in this field?
Yeah, I'll make sure I don't repeat some of Lauren's. I guess I'll start with marketing. Another great one, because she kind of referenced it when it comes to sales and being like in the stores where you're the person talking to those store managers and making sure products on the shelf. But some of those things where you're actually out and about with product can lead to a lot. So another one is doing sampling. We often use people here at Laird. We don't use a big agency for sampling, but we'll look for like ambassadors in college to say, hey, do you want to come on weekends? And it can be kind of an hourly rate, but we need people to be out at Spartan races and places like that because we can't do it all ourselves. And there you're learning to talk to people, how to talk about our product, how to sample. So that's a really great one marketing wise and opportunities like that. And then I always wished, because I came into, so I think it's so great that panels like this exist, because when I came into this role and this industry, suddenly there were all these jobs that I just had no clue were even a thing that you could do. So just some other roles, I guess, to mention in the industry are a packaging engineer. Like if you really think it would be cool to work in food, but you love engineering and you're like, how does that work? There are people who are literally developing these amazing bottles and cool packages that have new openings and things, which I always find fascinating. And then another one is operations, which is if you like math and process and that type of thing, that's a great role that you can come out of college and you're actually, maybe you're like buying the ingredients and you're learning how to buy things and manage that, or you're making sure that the product's being made. So I think it's thinking about a product and all the different people that make it happen that are great ways to kind of get involved with some of these companies.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, what advice would you give for a high schooler or young professional interested in landing a job in this field? And Lauren, I'll hand it off to you.
If you're listening to this panel, whether it's live or on a webinar, you're already doing amazing, wonderful things. Because I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have is be curious and talk to people. I was probably a bit shy when I was younger, and when I finally got the courage to start to ask my parents' friends out to coffee to learn more about what they do, that's when I really started to understand all of these different careers that exist, since I didn't necessarily have role models to see what a business or marketing career could look like. So I would say, like, be very curious, talk to as many people as possible, and don't be timid in asking someone for, a phone call or a Zoom date or a coffee in person, because people usually get really excited to share what they do, because most of us actually like what we do, since we do it many hours a day and many hours a week. And then another great resource that has popped up that wasn't available when I was younger is listening to podcasts. There's all kinds of good podcasts that can give you a sense of different industries or different functions in industries. So I think I listened to a podcast called the CMO podcast, and CMO is Chief Marketing Officer. And so it's just this man who interviews all these chief marketing officers so I can learn more about what they do. There's a lot of different podcasts that are about the natural foods industries, so you can learn about who the latest trending small companies are, or the latest food trends or health trends. So really be curious, because there's so many good sources of information through podcasts, friends, conversations, panels, webinars. So just be eager to learn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that insight. I do have a quick follow-up. You spoke on it a little bit on the topic of reaching out for coffee chats, but really quickly, could you also expand just a tad more on the importance of soft skills in this industry?
Yes. Oh my goodness. This is another thing that I didn't really realize until I was at least 10 years into my career. The interpersonal relationships are really important. I'm a very analytical person, and I was like, I just want to be recognized for this great analysis that I did. But I also need to be able to talk to someone and effectively communicate the implications of the analysis. And so strong communication skills are really important. Strong listening skills are really important. And just being curious as an interpersonal skill and asking questions and listening to the answer is also really important. And I've been doing this for over 20 years and I still don't have all the answers. And I think if you had asked me 20 years ago, I would have expected future Lauren to know everything. So it's okay to be humble and not have all the answers, because I've been at this for 20 years and I still don't have all the answers. And so don't feel silly asking questions, have the courage to ask questions. And then genuinely listen to the answer, because people will be really excited to share with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Martha, what is some advice you'd give to a young professional looking to get started in this industry?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, Lauren mentioned it quite a bit. A lot of this, you can bounce around to a lot of brands once you get into natural food. So it's compared to sometimes other careers where you become an expert in one type of way of doing something. We more have to be experts in how to lead something. So my first one would be find something to lead. And it doesn't have to be being the captain of a team or something like that. It really can be your summer job, your summer babysitting job, something that you've started on your own. But so much of this job and this industry comes down to, like we've talked about, touching a lot of different teams to make a product go on the shelf. And so leading something and learning how to do that will be such a huge step up as you try to get into the industry and go and interview someday for that. Another is, since we're talking natural products and food specifically, but I think this is true even if you were to choose something else, is really like love and be curious, like Lauren said about that industry. So like very tactically is go do the grocery shopping with your mom and dad or with yourself, when I'm sure Lauren and I are probably the most annoying people to grocery shop with, because I can spend like an entire Saturday morning walking shelves and looking at things, but it actually makes me excited to see what's out there and what's coming. So I think being online and following other brands is another huge one for any industry that you're going into. Is be ready to be like, what brands do I love in this space, and follow them on social media and see what they're doing, because it'll give you an idea of what the job is. It'll see like what people are putting out there and what marketing really can do. And then I think the last one is that as you get started in the industry, to be ready to do non-glamorous work. Sometimes it's easy to come in and think, I'm going to do that big print ad or that big campaign and get to do all this creative, where at the beginning, like Lauren was kind of mentioning, a lot of the work is sometimes just doing analytics and reporting, and then spending some of your Saturdays going out and doing sampling at races because you need to be the face of the brand. So when you're starting, you are that extension for things that need to get done, but doing that makes you much better down the road. So I think it's just that willingness of like, when we're looking at interns at our company, I'm always really transparent where I'm like, you might be shipping boxes a lot of the time because I'll help you, because that's just what we need to do on some given day. So those are kind of my big ones.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And since you're already on screen, I'll ask you the next question. We have a really thriving natural products industry in Boulder and across the Front Range. So I'd love to provide folks with a little bit more insight into what it's like to work with these local companies. So can you speak a little bit more about what it's like to work with Laird Superfood, and anything about the company culture you'd like to highlight?
Yeah. Like I said, I've been here 3 years, almost exactly. Laird Superfood is a pretty small company. Like we're what I think of as startup. The whole company is about 25, 26 people, and about half of them are here in the Boulder area. And so when you talk about company culture, it's our business. It feels in a way like a family business because of how invested every person is here that works on the business. Like how I just described being really excited to go into a store and see product on shelf. That's our entire team. We're texting on the weekends to say, did you see this just come out, or it finally hit my store, or I just saw this new social media ad from a competitive brand. So very close-knit. I'd say another really fun thing about working at a company the size of Laird, I talked a little bit about coming in the morning and tasting a product, but we get to, we work with a lot of powders. And so we can develop them right here in a room in this office. And so we move really, really fast compared to when I worked at a bigger company. There, it might take me a year to launch a new product. At Laird, I can think of a new flavor of something I want, and sometimes within maybe 3 or 4 months, I could have that product out online to see if people like it. So it's fast, and that's why you don't get bored. And then I think the last one about Laird, and it is we are very, very, very careful with the ingredients that we use, and we have rules that we do not break. A great example is a lot of food has different flavors and things like that in it, and we only use real food for our flavor. So if you're tasting like a chocolate latte of ours, that's because it has cacao powder in it, and that's how we flavor the food. So we are very, very specific on the quality of the food that we're going to put out into the world, which can make it really hard to develop new food, but then it makes it something that we're really proud of. So it's a really incredible company. And I think the only other piece that I'd hit on for Laird is we have some pretty amazing founders. It's a cool aspect of some marketing roles is our founders are one of the first big wave surfers ever, Laird Hamilton, where he's surfing waves the size of houses, which is crazy. But he's involved in his wife, Gabby Reese, who used to be a professional volleyball player. I get to work with these really, really amazing founders to put some cool products into the world. So it's a pretty amazing brand.
Awesome. Thank you for giving us some more insight. I think for any of our audience listening, I just want to pick out that company size piece can make a real difference. So kind of thinking about whether you want to work with a small size company, a larger one, it does really impact sort of that speed that you're working at. And then Lauren, on to you. What's it like to work at Rudi?
Yeah, so Rudi's, I didn't realize Laird was had a team that size. Rudi's has a pretty similar size team. I would say in terms of employees that are not specifically baking the bread, we probably have about 20 employees running the business. And then we have 2 bakeries in Boulder. So we have an organic bakery and a gluten-free bakery. And we probably have about 70 people that come in and bake the delicious bread that we make, which is really fun to have that tight connection with the product that you're making. Like Martha said, they're developing their new flavors in a room behind her. It's really cool to get to work every day, and by the aroma, I can tell what recipe we're baking. And it's really fun. And then you can try bread fresh off the line, and every morning the operations team and anyone else interested gets together and we look at the quality of the bread. Like, did it bake to the right height? Mm-hmm. Is the texture right? Is the moisture right? So it's just really fun to be that connected to the product that you're marketing. Some other things that I love about the Rudi's culture is integrity. And I think Martha touched on this when she was talking about ingredients and only using real food. I think Rudi's also operates under this idea that we want to make real food that we would be proud to serve to ourselves, to our family, to guests in our home. So we care a lot about the ingredients that we source. We get a lot of our wheat from a farm that's, just one state over. And that's really cool. And we can actually go visit the farm. So it's really nice to have that connection to our food chain. And integrity is really important to us in terms of that quality and connection with the food, but also with food safety. We take food safety very seriously because we want people to be eating safe, healthy food. And especially when you're making gluten-free bread, which about 25% of our bread is, it's really important that there's not any cross-contamination. There's not any wheat getting into the gluten-free product. So integrity and safety are always very top of mind for us. And we're addressing that every day in every meeting. But we also have a lot of fun. Some of our other tenets of our culture are winning together. We're very collaborative. We start many of our meetings by sharing what are the wins of the week. We like to support each other and help each other. And if I ever have a problem that I just want to brainstorm on, I can easily call any of my teammates and they would be happy to give me their time to help me solve problems. And then we're also really passionate. And I think you'll find this at every single natural and organic brand or company in Boulder is people don't just show up at 9 and leave at 5 and stop thinking about work. We chose this industry because we care so deeply about it and it's part of who we are. So like Martha said, they're thinking about it on the weekends. We're thinking about it at the grocery store. We're always excited to learn about new products or ingredients and trends, and we're always sharing it. And I think we also really like to connect across companies. So Martha and I have known each other probably for 10 years now, and I frequently call up Martha when I want to talk about something or when I need help solving a particular kind of problem that I know she's really good at. So it's a really supportive, collaborative culture, not just within the Rudi's company, but within the Boulder food and natural products community.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. And it's great to hear. I think that Boulder food community, it really is focused on that, like that healthy, natural food product. So it's very cool to hear. Like it's very intercollaborative as well. And next up, I'd like to hear from Martha. What misconceptions did you hold before entering your industry that folks thinking about going into the same field should be aware of?
I think the biggest misconception, not necessarily industry-wide in terms of natural food, but in terms of marketing, is what marketing really means. Like I really thought of it, I think going in as I maybe do and what you need to know for it and be willing to learn. Where at first it was like, okay, I'm going to need to do the math and be able to analyze the business over here. And then I need to do creative and I'm going to make, print magazines and social media posts. And so much of this industry is the level that you get to learn about things is amazing. So I'll give an example. We have an ingredient. A lot of people now, since our food isn't always, it's cleaned so much, which is a great thing for safety, but sometimes you're losing minerals and things in the food as it goes through those. So we have an ingredient that's a trace mineral, and we get it from Iceland. And we put that in our food. We put it into our creamers so that people can get that and get that benefit. This is one example. But we actually got to go to Iceland. We wanted to see how it was farmed and we wanted to understand how they processed it. So when you're in this industry, I think a lot of people can come in and think it's at this very surface level of what you end up learning or what kind of roles you might move into, where in reality, you're learning really cool things at a scientific detail, or you're learning things at a finance detail when you come in here. And then down the road, I've known people who've wanted to switch into other roles, and they kind of have the capability to do that because they've learned so much in those pieces. So I think it's really neat that it's an industry that, like Lauren said, you do not get bored because you are constantly doing new products, new brands, switching roles, and that there's the ability to do that in the industry.
Very cool. And Lauren, I'll hand it off to you. Any misconceptions that you held before entering this industry that anyone wanting to enter should know about?
Oh my gosh. So I'll talk about entering marketing specifically. So before I entered marketing, I thought marketing was just TV ads or an ad I might see in a magazine. And that didn't seem very interesting to me, to be honest. But what was interesting to me is thinking about, why did I just pick up that product on the shelf? Or why is this brand so popular? So what I realized is marketing is really about starting with a person, starting with a human, and thinking about what they want and what they need and what they like. And then marketing is creating the solution for them and providing it to them, figuring out how do you make them aware that you just made this perfect solution that doesn't exist and that you created just for them. And how do you get that message across? And then how do you get a product onto a grocery store shelf so the person can learn about it and then go buy it? So it's much deeper and richer and more intellectual than I expected, where I thought, like Martha said, it was very just superficial. I also thought that 10 years into this, I would have all the answers, which clearly I do not. So that was a big learning moment for me, is learning how much I don't know, and I'm never going to know it all, especially in marketing, because it's so fast paced and so dynamic. Like 12 years ago, I remember my boss asking me, what's a hashtag? I was in this industry before there was Instagram or TikTok or Amazon or buying online, or Amazon was just books. So there's so much change that you always have to keep learning. So that is a positive to me, because that really appeals to me from keeping me from getting bored. Even though I have to admit now I'm never going to be an expert with all the answers. And then I think another thing that surprised me is when I first started working and no longer being a student, I thought my career was just going to be like this linear lineup. Like I'm going to get a job at a company and then I'm going to move up and I'm going to move up and I'm going to move up. And like 10 years later, I'm still going to be at this company doing this thing. I'm just going to be getting better and more effective at it. And so one thing that's really surprised me is by following my curiosity, I've gotten to do different things. And, I might have started over here and then jumped and taken a job over here. And the amount of learning that has provided to me has been incredible. And I actually think that's made me better at any future role because I've learned so much more by trying this new type of job over here. So really the benefit of not having a linear career and by working in different roles and working for different companies, that benefit is much bigger than I ever imagined. So now as I think about future roles, I don't know if I'm going to be doing the exact same thing in 10 years from now, because what I'm really following is what am I curious about? What do I want to learn about? What do I think I'm good at? And then what actually creates difference for my company or my brand or my product? And I'm just kind of following the intersection of those three is just guiding me versus saying like, I want to go be a chief marketing officer. I'm like, I don't know, because I'm just going to keep following my curiosity and where I can make an impact for a company.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That leads us nicely into our last question. Are there any good resources you know of for our job seekers looking to learn more about working in natural products, or are there any resources that you wish you had had access to during your own education or job search? And Martha, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest one is I can't imagine what it would have been like to have LinkedIn and to be using that. I know I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, but when I can tell, like if, like Lauren had said about people reaching out and being willing to talk, I think that sending a personal message, knowing that someone is local, wanting to meet up, to learn about a company, is invaluable. And most will respond to something like that where it really is personal. When I get students that reach out, even college, I've had some across the country, but it's a great way to learn about a company and brand. And then there's the natural products industry group here in the Boulder area that puts on events, and they have their own job boards and postings that are very specific to natural food. And so that's another really great resource. And then another is you can find, and really with AI now and how that's starting to emerge, you can look up and with the Boulder Chamber say, who are the natural food companies in the area, and start to interact with them and do those coffee chats. But I think the way to search and find contacts with technology now is very different than when I started. You had to go to only a job fair. And I think those are still great resources, but making those digital connections and making sure that when you do it, you know the brand and you can talk about it passionately can go such a long way now to finding jobs. And sometimes reaching out and saying, hey, I'm really interested in your brand. Do you have any sampling opportunities, early entry, even if it's hourly opportunities within your company? A lot of brands do now use a lot more kind of supplemental support, like people who do some projects here and there. And it's a great way to get to know the company, whether it's an internship or just, like I said, the sampling. So kind of a lot of different ways, but between the Boulder Chamber resources, LinkedIn, and just making really personal emails out to people, I think you can go a pretty long way in the Boulder area.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Lauren, how about you? Are there any good resources you know of for job seekers or that you wish you had had access to during your own education or job search?
Absolutely. I love all of the resources that Martha touched on. To build on that, this one existed when I was looking for jobs and I still use it today. And I think it's still really relevant. But if you do go to a college, their alumni office is a great resource. They might have job postings, they might have resume reviews, but they also usually have a database of alumni that you can easily reach out to, which I realize you can also do through LinkedIn now, which was not a resource when I was younger. But I've had a lot of success through just cold emailing people who went to the same college as I did or the same grad school, saying, hey, I see that you work at this company and I'm really interested in this industry or this type of work. Would you be willing to talk to me? And like Martha said, people are always very responsive and very excited to respond to a personal note and share their experience. These are more educational to help you learn about an industry before you embark on conversations, have you show up a little bit smarter. But there's a lot of great food documentaries that exist now that didn't exist 15, 20 years ago, and you can stream them on Netflix or Amazon or free from their website. So that's just a good way to learn about the industry and food. And I mentioned podcasts earlier. Definitely echo Martha with the professional groups. There's a great one called Naturally Colorado that has a lot of events, and a lot of them are networking events. So it's a great way to meet people, ask questions, learn more. And then one idea that I had that is probably really a great way to learn more is just, if you're at the Boulder this weekend and you see a sampling tent, go up and yes, ask the person about the brand and their sample, but also ask them, how did you get the sampling job this weekend? And maybe they're hiring for more. I know a lot of people that just got a job at a company by the company was sampling at Sprouts, and they're like, hey, do you need more help? So again, just having the courage to ask questions and talk to people. They're all around us. We just might not always see it.
Okay, thank you both so much. This concludes the moderated part of our panel. If you haven't already dropped a question in the chat, please feel free to do so. We do have a couple questions that have already come in. So the first one is, how is AI impacting the creative industry? Is it helping, or is it more of a competitor? And if any one of you wants to take that, let me know.
I can start because I have a creative director, and she's kind of the hub of my creative, and then we use contractors as support. But she literally today is at a conference on AI, where we've been doing a bunch of things as a team. I use it every single day, and I would put it much more as a compliment right now, because it still requires a strategy and a guidance, but it lets the creative team be so efficient because the need for content and creative right now is so huge. So I'll use an example. If we're on TikTok and we're looking at our monthly calendar for TikTok, I mean, posting once a day is probably bare minimum. And that is 30 pieces of unique videos and things that we need to make for a month. And it's so hard to do, where AI is going to be really neat, where it's going to let us decide which ones we can use AI for, and then which ones we want to use our own creative for. So my team so far has absolutely loved it. I think it's learning how to use it effectively. And the other thing with AI that we really debate a lot is, when do you use it and when do you really choose not to use it? A great example is, I don't want to use AI when it comes to the founders of my company. They are real people, and what they do is already incredible enough. So I don't need to enhance that in any way, unless I'm doing it in a fun manner, like the recent, superhero action figure trend or something like that. But it also is really great for spurring ideas, where we can prompt it and say, hey, we know we've got some idea. We want to go after this coffee can taste better than this coffee. You can put that in and they'll come up with some ways of doing that you wouldn't have thought of before. So we're having a lot of fun with it. We are trying our best to stay up to date on it. But even when we have experts come in, they will tell you it literally changes pretty much every 48 hours to every week. So I lean back to that question about what kind of someone who's coming into our industry can bring. I think the knowledge of technology and how to use it, and knowing that yourself, we're going to look for younger employees who are coming in to be the experts on that more than ourselves. So I just think it's such a huge opportunity for new entrants to come in and bring a skill set at such a big scale that you couldn't do before.
Awesome. And Lauren, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump in.
No, I think Martha articulated it incredibly well. I agree. It's not a competitor. It is definitely a companion that, if used with good prompts and good human perception and interpretation, it really helps with efficiency. And at Rudi's, we've used it in similar sounding ways of, we might use it to create a photo. So instead of going to a summer camp and taking a picture of a Rudi's, Sandoz carton at a summer camp, we have AI do it. And then we have AI do a road trip photo. And then we have AI do a photo at the beach. And so all of a sudden, we have these images, but we didn't have to use the resources and time to drive to a summer camp, set up a shoot, drive to the beach, etc. And then we also use it for brainstorming, because it can just kind of expand the realm of your brainstorm. But there always needs to be a human to help guide and interpret the results and figure out what you really do with what the AI is giving back to you. And then I have not done this personally, but Martha, I'd be curious if you've done this. I've heard of more and more companies using AI to get insights from online reviews. So like loading all of your online reviews into AI and saying, okay, what's the key messages from these 15,000 Amazon reviews that I don't have time to read? All of a sudden you have this great efficiency tool that can give you insights.
No, it's interesting. We haven't done the reviews yet, although that's pretty genius to look at that. What we have done as a test to be like, how accurate is this, is we'll get a big presentation, like the big monthly presentation where it's like 40 pages long and you're going over the results from the previous month. And we might put that in and see what it spits out in terms of what are issues that you can find in the data? What are some business problems? And then we've done our own notes on the side to say, when we do our own reading of that, what would we have said were the problems that we want to talk about? And it's been about 80% there. So it, like you said, you still need to find the 20, but if it can speed up. So I think the reviews piece, it's really like every day there's something else where we're kind of like, let's try it on this, as long as we feel good with putting the information in there.
Right.
Okay, great. And our last question is coming in about Sundance. So with the news that we're going to have a lot of tourism coming to Boulder, is there any special plans to promote your companies?
Yeah, we at Laird actually have jumped on it. It was something that we're incredibly excited for, and thank goodness there's, a little bit of time to get ready for it. But we recently hired someone at the end of last year to focus on a channel that Lauren actually, I think, used to work on we call it like away from home. So instead of being in a grocery store, you think like, why wouldn't you find our creamers on an airplane? Why wouldn't you go to your hotel room and our creamers and our instant lattes are in your hotel room, or our protein bars? And so we already have been really wanting to be as involved as we can with Boulder. And I think it's only made us more excited for reaching out to hotels and just local businesses to say, let's all make this as big as we can. But I mean, a dream for us is to be the coffee of Sundance, right? That's where we want to go. But it's a pretty amazing opportunity for the area. So it'll be so fun to see how everyone activates around it.
I love this question.
Yeah.
I would love to tell you that Rudi's has concrete plans that far in advance, but we don't. But I share Martha's excitement around the opportunity that this presents. We are extremely proud to be a Boulder company, and it would be great to raise awareness of Rudi's to all of these new visitors to Boulder. So we will definitely be doing something. I'm just not sure what yet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both so much. And with that, we've reached the end of our panel today. A big thank you again to Lauren and Martha for joining us today and providing us with some really great insight. We really appreciate it. And so that's a wrap. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, guys.